It's not every day a movie comes along that really gets people talking, even decades later. But Saving Private Ryan, um, I think it's safe to say it's in a category of its own.
Yeah, it really is. What gets me is how it hits people so personally. You know,
Right.
you've got veterans who really connect with how real it feels, and then younger generations trying to understand the sacrifices that were made,
Yeah.
and even people from other countries who bring their own totally different viewpoints.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today, right?
Right.
This whole stack of IMDb reviews. I mean, what really jumps out to people when they watch this film?
Well, and do those reactions kind of depend on where they're coming from, their background and all that?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see if any patterns pop up as we go through these. There's a lot to hack.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of unpacking, we can't just ignore that opening scene. The Omaha beach landing. Man, talk about an intense way to start a film.
A lot of the reviewers, especially veterans, they really focused on how realistic and powerful that whole sequence is.
Mm-hmm.
One veteran even said, he'd give the first 23 minutes a 12 out of 10, just
Wow.
for intensity,
A 12 out of 10.
compared to the rest of the movie, yeah.
Wow. I mean, what do you think it was about those first 23 minutes that hit so hard for him? I mean, is it just the chaos and brutality, or the sounds, the sights of battle, that kind of sensory overload?
Right, it makes you think about, where's the line between, recreating history and then reopening old wounds for people?
Right.
Another veteran described it as being back in country.
Wow.
It seems like Spielberg really captured something, really visceral, and maybe even, something that can be a little bit triggering for people who have been through combat.
Makes you think. But it also shows how film can transport us to another time and place, even if it's somewhere we'd rather not go back to.
Right.
But then you get this whole debate about historical accuracy because of how real it feels.
Yeah. One reviewer argued that Saving Private Ryan, even though it's a fictional story, it actually works as a really good piece of historical fiction.
Oh, interesting. So how did they reach that conclusion?
Well, they pointed to specific things in the film that are historically accurate, like Rommel's strategic errors and the Allies choosing to go for Normandy instead of Calais. These were big things back then, real points of debate.
Yeah.
And the film, it makes them come alive in a way that, a textbook just can't.
Right, yeah. It's one thing to read about strategy, but to see it all play out on screen with the human drama, the consequences.
Exactly. And the reviewer also defended how Spielberg portrays both the German army and the American characters.
Okay.
They felt like he did it on purpose, the historical context, the mix of personalities, to add depth to the story,
Okay.
avoiding simple good versus evil stuff, even with all the horrors of war.
So this reviewer is saying that Saving Private Ryan actually makes us understand history better, even though it's fictionalized. Makes you wonder what other insights the film offers, especially for those of us who weren't around during World War II.
Yeah, and this leads to something another reviewer brought up. His grandfather was a D-Day veteran, and he found the film so realistic that he actually couldn't finish watching it.
Wow. I mean, that really says something about how powerful the film is. It was almost too real, too close to home for someone who actually lived through it. But then it makes you wonder, what was it specifically that he found difficult? Was it the violence, or the emotional intensity, or something else entirely?
It's a good question, and it ties in with another review about how the film helped a younger generation understand the lasting trauma of war, especially the nightmares that many veterans experience.
Hmm.
The film doesn't avoid showing the psychological impact of war, and that really struck a chord with this reviewer.
Yeah. It's incredible that a film can do that, bridge that gap between generations and help us connect with what those who came before us went through. Really speaks to Spielberg's storytelling, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It highlights how Saving Private Ryan is more than just a war film.
Right.
It's about human resilience, the bonds between soldiers, and how trauma can stick with you. But it also makes you think about whose stories get told and how different perspectives shape our understanding of history.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's impossible to talk about World War II without recognizing all those different experiences and viewpoints, right? And it sounds like some viewers felt the film didn't quite capture all of that complexity.
Yeah, we have a European reviewer who pushes back against what they see as this "we died to save your eyes" sentiment coming from some American viewers.
Okay, interesting.
They point out that America didn't join the war right away, and that millions of Europeans suffered and died without direct American intervention. It's a valid point, and it makes us think about the importance of looking at things from multiple angles, especially when it comes to a global conflict like World War II.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that how we tell history often depends on national identity and personal biases, right?
Right.
What one country sees as heroic might look very different to another. Makes you wonder how viewers from other countries like Germany or Japan would interpret Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, we have a German reviewer who offers a thoughtful perspective on this. They acknowledge the film's attempt to be realistic, but also say that no film, no matter how graphic or well-intentioned, can ever fully capture the horror of war.
It's a sobering thought, for sure. Makes you think about the responsibility filmmakers have when dealing with such a sensitive and complex subject. How do you find that balance between educating and informing, but not going too far with the violence or exploiting a tragedy?
Right, it's a tough balance. And this German reviewer encourages viewers to go beyond the film. Visit places like Normandy and Berlin to get a deeper understanding of the war's impact, almost like the film is just the beginning of a much larger conversation about history, memory, and what conflict really costs us.
I like that. The film as a jumping off point. It gets you curious, makes you want to learn more, connect with the past on a deeper level. And it's not just about visiting battlefields, right? It's about seeking out those firsthand accounts, listening to veterans' stories, really immersing yourself in the human side of history.
Exactly. It's about understanding the context, the complexities, and the nuances that a film, even one as well-researched as Saving Private Ryan, can only hint at. It's about piecing together those individual stories and experiences to form a more complete picture of the past.
We've heard from veterans, film buffs, history enthusiasts, even folks from different countries with their own unique takes on the war. What's really striking me is how Saving Private Ryan goes beyond entertainment and becomes something much more profound. It's not just a movie, it's a shared experience that connects us to the past, to each other, and to something larger than ourselves.
It's almost like a cultural touchstone, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so.
It's a film that has sparked countless conversations, debates, and moments of reflection. It's a film that has challenged our perceptions of war, heroism, and the human condition.
And it's not just about remembering the past, is it? It's about learning from it, recognizing the human cause of conflict, and working towards a future where such horrors are never repeated.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the importance of empathy, compassion, and dialogue, especially in a world where conflicts and divisions seem to be ever present. It's a reminder that peace is precious and fragile, something to be cherished and actively pursued.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive into the world of Saving Private Ryan, I have a question for you, the listener. What resonates with you most about this film? Does it effectively bridge the gap between history and entertainment? How has it shaped your understanding of war and its lasting impact?
That's a great question to ponder. There's no one right answer, as Saving Private Ryan is such a complex and multi-layered film. It invites personal interpretation, reflection, and even debate.
Exactly. It's a film that stays with you long after the credits roll, prompting you to think, to feel, and to question your own assumptions about history and the human experience.
And that's the power of great art, isn't it?
Yeah.
It challenges us, moves us, and leaves us with more questions than answers.
If you haven't seen Saving Private Ryan yet, I highly recommend giving it a watch. But go in with an open mind and prepare yourself for a powerful and thought-provoking experience.
And remember, it's not just a film, it's a conversation starter. Talk about it with your friends, family, even strangers. Share your thoughts, your feelings, and your own personal connections to the story.
Because those conversations, those shared reflections, are how we keep these important stories alive. It's how we learn from the past and how we move forward together towards a more peaceful and understanding future.
And that's what makes this deep dive so rewarding. It's not just about consuming information. It's about engaging with it, debating it, and ultimately using it to better understand ourselves and the world around us.
So keep those conversations going, keep exploring, and keep learning. And join us next time for another deep dive into a topic that's sure to spark your curiosity.
It's amazing how Saving Private Ryan can really, get to you emotionally. We talked about how real the battle scenes feel, but what about the emotional stuff? Remember that reviewer who said they felt like they were, quote, practically in the battle with John Miller?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's almost like Spielberg put you right there in the action, not just watching it, but experiencing it.
Right, and that's what a lot of reviewers picked up on, like how immersive it feels. One even described it as a numbing experience, said they were crying and weeping through a lot of it.
Wow, numbing. That's a powerful way to put it. It's like the film doesn't let you stay detached. You have to face the human cost of war, even though it's a fictional story.
Exactly. And speaking of that human cost, a few reviewers talked about how the film shows the dehumanizing effects of war on everyone involved.
I'd love to hear more about that. Any specific examples that come to mind?
Oh, yeah, for sure. One pointed out how even Captain Miller, the supposed hero, admits he doesn't know anything about Private Ryan. He even says at first he didn't care about him at all.
That's a pretty striking observation. Makes you think about how war forces people to make tough choices, maybe even compromise their own morals sometimes. In all that chaos and violence, it's easy to forget about the individual lives.
Yeah. And then the reviewer goes on to say that as the mission goes on, Private Ryan starts sharing stories about his brothers. And that's what changes Miller's perspective. He starts seeing Ryan as a person.
So even in the middle of war, that human connection can still break through. It reminds us that empathy can still exist, even in those dark times.
Absolutely. And it's not just Miller who changes. Remember Rybit, at first he's all for ditching the mission, sees it as a waste of life. But then he connects with Miller on a personal level and starts seeing the value in what they're doing, even if it means risking their own lives.
It's amazing how Spielberg weaves those character arcs into a story that's already so intense and action-packed. You're not just watching battles, you're seeing these guys wrestling with their own belief, their fears, their reasons for fighting.
Yeah. And we can't forget Upham. He's often seen as the nerdy one, right? Struggling with his own sense of being a coward. But he ends up facing his fears and makes a really tough decision, a morally gray area kind of thing. Shows how war messes with you mentally, even if you're not in direct combat.
So Saving Private Ryan isn't afraid to go deep into these characters' heads. It's not just about the fighting, but also the internal struggles they're going through. I think that's what sets it apart from a typical war movie, wouldn't you say?
For sure. Those internal struggles, those moral dilemmas, and the scars they leave behind, that's what makes Saving Private Ryan such a powerful, unforgettable film.
You keep saying unforgettable, and it makes me think maybe that's why it sticks with people so much. It stays with you long after the credits roll. What about the ending? What stands out to you?
For me, it's that last shot of Captain Miller whispering, "Earn this," to Private Ryan. Man, that moment gets me every time. It's like a plea to future generations to understand the sacrifice, to learn from the past, and try to build a world where this doesn't happen again.
Reminder that the impact of war stretches far beyond the battlefield, across generations.
And it brings us back to that question the film asks, right? Is one life worth risking 8 others to save?
Such a tough question, with no easy answers. And Saving Private Ryan doesn't shy away from that. It forces you to think about it long after the film ends.
Yeah, it's not just a historical drama, it's deeper than that. It makes you think about humanity, about sacrifice, about the lasting effects of war. One reviewer even said, and I love this quote, "War is hell, and Saving Private Ryan peeks into the gates of Hades."
Wow, what an image. It captures that feeling of darkness and loss, but also reminds us of how resilient people can be.
We've covered so many insightful points from these reviews. It's amazing to see how Saving Private Ryan has connected with so many people on different levels. But what does all this mean for you, the listener? We've talked about how this film has sparked conversations about history, sacrifice, and what it means to be human. But how does it resonate with you, personally?
You're right. It's clear that Saving Private Ryan is more than just a war film. It's an experience that makes us confront hard truths, to honor the past, and to work towards a future without war.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that peace is precious, something we have to fight for and protect. And it reminds us to never forget the sacrifices of those who fought for our freedom.
We've come a long way in this deep dive, but there's still more to uncover. We have some really interesting reviews left to explore. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into these Saving Private Ryan reviews, I keep thinking about that German reviewer's point about visiting historical sites.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Getting a deeper understand of World War II than any film ever could. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
It is a powerful statement. Makes you realize that Saving Private Ryan, even as amazing as it is, it's still just one piece of a much bigger story.
Yeah.
It's like a starting point, encouraging us to go beyond just watching and really engage with history in a more personal way.
I like that idea. Saving Private Ryan as a starting point.
Yeah.
It sparks a curiosity, that desire to learn more, to connect with the past, on a deeper level. And it's not just battlefield, right? It's about finding those firsthand accounts, hearing from veterans, really immersing yourself in the human side of history.
Absolutely. It's about getting the full picture, the context, the complexity, the little details that a film, even one like Saving Private Ryan, can only, just touch on.
Yeah.
It's about taking all those individual stories, those experiences, and piecing them together to see the past more fully.
We've heard from veterans, film buffs, people fascinated by history, even people from different parts of the world with their own unique perspectives on the war.
Right.
What strikes me is how Saving Private Ryan becomes more than just a movie.
Yeah.
It's this shared experience that links us to the past, to each other, and to something bigger than ourselves.
Almost like a cultural landmark, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so.
This film that has started so many conversations, debates, moments of reflection, it makes us rethink our ideas about war, about heroism, about what it means to be human.
And it's not just about remembering what happened, is
Yeah,
it? It's about learning from it, recognizing the human cost of conflict and working towards a future where these things don't happen again.
exactly. It's about understanding how important empathy, compassion, and communication are. Especially in a world where there's so much conflict and division. It reminds us that peace is something we need to value and work for.
So as we close out this deep dive into Saving Private Ryan, I have a final question for you, the listener.
Yeah.
What part of this film really sticks with you? Does it bridge the gap between history and entertainment? How has it shaped how you think about war and its lasting impact?
Great question. And there's no one right answer because Saving Private Ryan has so many layers to it. It really does encourage you to think for yourself, to reflect, and even to debate these things.
It's a film that stays with you. Long after you've seen it, you're still thinking, feeling, and questioning your own ideas about history and the human experience.
That's what great art does, right?
Yeah.
It challenges us, it moves us, and it leaves us with more questions than answers.
If you haven't seen Saving Private Ryan yet, I really do recommend giving it a watch. But go in with an open mind and be prepared for a powerful and thought-provoking experience.
And remember, it's not just a film, it's a conversation starter. Talk about it with your friends, family, colleagues, whoever. Share what you think, how you feel, and your own personal connections to the story.
Because those conversations, those reflections, that's how we keep these stories alive. It's how we learn from the past and how we move towards a better future together.
And that's what makes this deep dive so great. It's not just about taking in information. It's about engaging with it, discussing it, and ultimately using it to better understand ourselves and the world we live in.
So keep those conversations going, keep exploring, keep learning. And until next time, keep an eye out for our next deep dive. We're going to be exploring a topic that we're sure will pique your interest.
N2IS.
NKRA?